This bracelet belonged to my mother. Every head in the grand ballroom turned sharply toward the voice. Among the designer suits and glittering evening gowns, a young man stood frozen, his hand clenched around a silver bracelet that had just fallen from the wrist of the waitress who spilled the wine. Julian Davenport, only son of the late Amelia Davenport, stared at the worn piece of metal as if it had just crushed his entire world. "You're mistaken," the girl said, panic rising in her voice. "It belonged to my mother. I've worn it since I was little." She knelt down, reaching for the bracelet, but Julian stepped back as if the object were sacred. No one among the 500 guests knew it, but in that moment, Julian felt as if he were holding his mother's hand, the woman who had vanished over 2 decades ago. He turned the bracelet over, a tiny, almost invisible ridge. He pressed it. Click! His mind exploded as a thin strip of paper slid out from a hidden compartment. If you're reading this, then the truth has finally come to light. The handwriting was slanted, hauntingly familiar. Julian's chest tightened. He remembered the night of her death, labeled suicide due to depression. He was just 9 years old when they sent him to live with Uncle Charles, the man who would later inherit the entire Davenport empire. He had always suspected, but he had no proof. No one believed him. Now the evidence was in his hands, and standing before him was the mysterious girl who wore the bracelet only his mother ever owned, never recorded in any file, never mentioned in any report. Who was she? Her name was Eva, 24 years old, working 2 jobs to support her younger brother in college. No parents, just one keepsake her mother had left behind before vanishing when Eva was a child. Eva didn't know who her father was, didn't know the bracelet held secrets. All she knew was, every time she felt hopeless, she held on to it like an invisible lifeline, keeping her from falling into the dark. On stage, Uncle Charles raised his glass. Today marks the 30th anniversary of Davenport's global expansion. Julian stepped forward, uninvited, unannounced. He raised the bracelet like a torch. "Stop, I have something to reveal." The room froze. Even the band fell silent. This bracelet belonged to my mother. It has a secret compartment, and inside was her final message. She didn't take her own life. She was forced to disappear by her own family. Chairs scraped. Charles frowned, approaching his nephew with a tight smile. "Julian, this isn't the time." "Shut up," Julian shouted. "You knew. You've always known." He turned to Eva. "How long have you worn this bracelet?" "My whole life," she said softly, tears brimming. "It's the only thing my mother left me. She told me never to take it off unless I met someone who knew how to open it." "What was your mother's name?" "Amelia," she whispered. The room gasped. A sudden wind swept through the sealed ballroom. Julian's hands trembled as he passed the note to Eva. "This is my mother's handwriting." Eva traced the letters with her fingers and burst into tears. "She was alive when I was taken, wasn't she? She was imprisoned, and I was told she'd committed suicide." He turned to the crowd. "I was deceived, and she, my sister, was hidden away in the dark for 2 decades. Charles screamed. "No one will believe you." Julian snapped back, eyes blazing. "I have her handwriting. I have a witness, and I am the rightful heir." Click, a reporter captured the moment. The media buzzed to life. The nameless waitress became the center of attention, and the most powerful man in the room began to lose control. And so the flame of the past was reignited. A small piece of metal, a handwritten note, 2 children torn apart, and a secret that refused to stay buried. Julian and Eva, brother and sister, truth, darkness, and the battle to reclaim honor, family, and justice had begun. One day before the event, New York stood still under a cloud-heavy morning sky. Winter had come early. Gray light pressed against the glass windows of the Davenport Holdings headquarters. Inside, Julian sat alone at a long walnut conference table. Dozens of documents spread out before him. Financial reports, merger contracts, personnel files, old photographs, his mother's journal. His eyes had long since dried, but the memory of that night remained vivid. His mother had closed her bedroom door. The eerie sound of porcelain shattering, raised voices, then sudden silence. The next morning, Uncle Charles took him away. His mother was declared severely depressed. A suicide, no funeral, no body ever found. And Julian remained silent for 20 years. 5 blocks away in a working-class neighborhood along the Hudson River, Eva Monroe woke up at 5 a.m. A thin young woman wrapped in a light coat, she stepped onto her balcony and watched the city stretch into the distance. The sound of subway trains, the smell of burnt coffee, and the silver bracelet on her wrist, dull now, its shine faded by time. Eva worked as a waitress by day and delivered food by night. She was raising her younger brother through college. Quiet, resilient. She never knew who her father was, only that her mother had vanished, leaving nothing behind but the bracelet wrapped around Eva's infant wrist. That day, Julian first met Eva at a party hosted by Charles. She was there to deliver a cake. She accidentally spilled wine on a table. The bracelet slipped from her wrist and hit the floor. Julian reached for it and realized that was where it all began. Uncle Charles had hidden Eva from the world the night Amelia vanished. He feared that if Eva lived and the truth surfaced, the fortune under Julian's name might one day slip away. He had Amelia committed to a psychiatric hospital and faked her suicide, all under the pretense of being Julian's legal guardian. But Amelia had left one final letter carefully sealed inside the bracelet Eva had worn all her life. Julian never expected it. Eva had eyes like their mother, walked like her, and the bracelet was the key to everything. Evidence surfaced all at once. A long-lost family photo, a newspaper article that had been scrubbed, medical records tampered with, a former hospital employee's identity erased. Everything returned, and confronting Charles was no longer about honor, it was about morality and the lives of two people. Julian looked out from his high-rise window. New York below looked like a map. For the first time, he finished reading his mother's journal. On the last page, she had written, "Eva will grow up alone. You must face the darkness and do what is right. Don't let it bury you like it buried me." The battle had begun. Eva was still being swept along by waves of pain she didn't yet understand. And Julian, after 20 years of silence, believed for the first time, family can be terrifying, but the truth must be told. Rain poured down that day. The awning of the small diner where Eva worked dripped steady streams of water glistening under the dim neon lights. Julian sat in the corner booth, silent. In front of him, the silver bracelet rested on a neatly folded napkin. Beside it, his phone displayed a scanned image of the handwriting found in the hidden compartment. Eva sat across from him, her hands twisted nervously in her lap. She couldn't take her eyes off the bracelet. "You said this bracelet belonged to your mother." "Yes, and also to yours." The air froze for a moment. The damp smell, the sound of rain, the ticking clock, everything stood still. Julian slid a crumpled envelope toward her. "I found this in the archives of Windermere Private Hospital. Your mother's name is on the inpatient list, under an alias, 2006, the same year my mother disappeared." Eva's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of a medical file, a faded black and white photo, but the face in it took her breath away. It was the face that haunted her childhood through scattered dreams and the fragmented stories her aunt once told a woman with long black hair and sorrowful eyes. "I thought she was dead. That's what they all told me." Julian said nothing. A storm raged inside him. The gentle mother who had taught him to read his first words had been erased, vanished as if she never existed. And now she returned through the eyes of a stranger. A stranger who might be his sister. "My uncle hid everything, I'm certain of it. Because if she was alive, he had no legal claim to the inheritance. I don't understand. Why me? Why was I taken from her?" Julian pulled out something else. A photograph, old and worn. It was taken at a family gathering. In the center, a woman in a white dress, his mother. Beside her, a little girl no older than 3 in a lacy dress, wearing the silver bracelet. In the far left corner, barely visible, Charles Davenport. His stare ice cold. Eva gasped. She remembered that dress, remembered that night, remembered her mother's whispered words. "No matter what happens, don't take this bracelet off. It will lead you home." "I'm really her daughter," she choked out. Julian nodded, but his eyes didn't hold joy. He looked toward the window, rain still falling like it was trying to wash something away. "And if that's true, then we share a common enemy." He placed a worn, leather-bound journal on the table. It had a brass clasp, rusted with time. "My mother's diary. I found it in my grandfather's safe, hidden in the basement of the estate. No one knew about it, except me." He opened to the final page. "Charles doesn't just want the company. He wants to erase the past, to erase me. I fear that one day, if I don't make it back, my children will grow up never knowing the truth. If anyone finds this journal, protect them." Eva broke down in tears. Julian sat still. His heart felt like it had been torn apart and stitched back together at once. Two broken pieces finally fitting together, held by trembling ink on aged paper. "I won't let him destroy anyone else," Julian said, his eyes burning with resolve. Ava wiped her tears. She clutched the bracelet, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. "I'll help you. Not for the money, but for the truth. For her." Outside, the rain had eased. A sliver of light pierced through the diner's fogged-up window. The turning point had arrived, and the past was awakening. The next morning, the Davenport estate woke to an unusually heavy silence. The sunlight couldn't pierce through the dense clouds overhead. Ancient trees lining the driveway bowed low as if warning of the storm to come. Julian stood at the front gate, Eva by his side. She wore a simple white shirt, her hair tied back. Her eyes no longer avoided his. "I've never walked into this place as someone who belonged to this family. Well, today we change that." The iron gates opened slowly, creaking like the weary sigh of an aging beast. The grand hall gleamed. Crystal chandeliers, silver candlesticks, the soft hum of a piano. Guests in formal attire raised glasses of expensive wine, celebrating the 65th birthday of the Davenport patriarch. Charles sat at the center, regal like a modern king. Beside him, his young wife, face cold as ice. On his hand, a sapphire ring, a symbol of power. Julian stepped in. Every eye turned. "Julian, my son decides to grace us with a visit." "What a surprise." "I didn't come alone." Eva stepped forward. The room stiffened. Whispers rose. "A waitress with the billionaire's heir." Charles narrowed his eyes but forced a smile. "And this young lady is my sister." The music stopped. A wine glass slipped, shattered. Charles laughed loud and sharp, echoing off the marble. "Sister Julian, have you been reading too many novels again?" Julian pulled out a worn journal. "I read exactly what you feared most. Mother, and the truth." He tossed the book onto the table. The pages fell open, slanted handwriting, ink smudged with tears. "Charles forced me to sign a document relinquishing my rights to the family in exchange for the safety of my children. He said disappear or be buried. I chose to disappear." Ava stepped forward, holding up a photograph, one Charles never thought still existed. "This is me, 3 years old, with my mother, and you. At the party you swore you never attended." Charles snatched the photo. His face changed color. But before he could speak, an elderly voice rose from the back of the room. "I remember that night, because I was the one who helped her escape." All heads turned. It was the housekeeper, a woman who had served the Davenports for 40 years. "I stayed silent for too long, but today, my conscience won't allow it." She handed Julian a carefully wrapped cloth. Inside, an old cassette tape from a mini recorder. "She asked me to keep this. Said if Julian or the little girl ever came back, show them the truth." Julian pressed play. His mother's voice rang out, shaky but clear. "Charles, don't do this. The children are innocent. If you take me, at least let them stay together. Don't separate them, please." Then Charles's voice, "They won't remember you. They'll grow up thinking I saved them. No one will ask. No one is allowed to ask." The ballroom fell silent. A prominent investor stood up. "Mr. Davenport, is this true?" Charles clenched his fists, but Julian no longer looked afraid. "You didn't just lie to the family, you deceived the entire corporation. I have enough to open an emergency hearing, and if you don't resign, I'll go public." Eva stepped forward and placed the silver bracelet on the table. "And this is living proof. I exist. My mother existed. The truth never died." Charles exhaled hard. For the first time in his life, he had no response. After the party, in his private office, Charles smashed a decanter of whiskey. "You two don't know what you're messing with. You're just trash. Spawn of a woman who betrayed me." Julian stood firm, eyes unblinking. "She refused to live a lie like you. That's why she was silenced. But we're back, not for revenge, but to end this." Charles lunged, hand raised, about to strike. Eva stepped between them. "Touch my brother and I swear I won't just release that tape. I'll take you to court. For abduction, for threats, for abuse of power." Charles stepped back. The yellow light cast over his face, and for the first time he looked small. Wind rustled past them. Downstairs, reporters were already gathering. Julian turned to Eva. "We're about to start a real war, are you sure? You're the first person to ever call me your sister. I'm not running." They didn't hold hands, they didn't embrace. But that look was enough. Families may break, But truth, no matter how late, is blood finding its way home. A single page tore loose from the journal, caught by the wind. The first page. The day I wrote this, I didn't know if I'd survive. But if someone reads it one day, please believe this. Love will find its way back. Boardroom, 53rd floor. Davenport Holdings. White light poured down onto the long walnut table. All senior executives, lawyers, legal advisors, and major investors were present. The atmosphere was tight, no music, no wine. Only the sound of pens tapping against the table and wary glances being exchanged. Julian stood. In front of him, a projector displayed a document with a bold headline: Confidential Audit Report, Second Generation Trust Fund. Since 2004, a sum of $28 million has been funneled through 5 shell companies. It was supposedly meant for a trust fund benefiting the next generation of heirs, yet not a single cent ever reached my account. Julian paused. He opened a small file box and pulled out a printed document with a red fingerprint stamp. This is a forged declaration signed under my mother's name, and this, he held up another sheet, is a handwriting analysis report. He looked directly at Charles. It's not my mother's handwriting, it's yours. One of the CFOs stood up pale. I was ordered to destroy the original documents, but I kept a copy, just in case I ever needed to protect myself. His hands shook as he handed Julian a USB drive. Julian plugged it in. On the screen, a surveillance video played. A masked man entered the company archives. Then he removed his mask. It was Charles, swapping the original files with doctored versions. Gasps filled the boardroom. An older lawyer set down his pen and murmured, "I think we now know who's truly been running this generation's legacy." Julian and Eva's mother's journal. Julian pulled out his mother's journal. This time he turned to the final page. "If you're reading this, I may no longer be with you. But find Eva. Blood doesn't need paperwork to be real. I pray you'll have the courage to face the past and the heart to forgive." Eva sat beside him, her eyes red from tears. You know, she used to call me Eva Light, because I was the only thing left after the darkness. "No," Julian said gently. "You're the light. She saved for me." Nightfall at the Davenport family cemetery. Julian, Eva, and the old housekeeper stood before a small, unmarked grave hidden behind the grand marble tombs of the Davenport lineage. No name, no birth date, just a patch of earth. He claimed she died somewhere else, but this is where he hid her. Eva lit a small candle. Its warm glow flickered across her face. "We'll give her name back, we'll build a marker, and we'll tell this story so no one forgets." Julian nodded. He placed the silver bracelet, the piece that led them to the truth, at the base of the future headstone. A breeze passed gently over them. Strangely, it felt like an invisible embrace. Julian at the press conference. He stood on stage. Behind him, a close-up of the silver bracelet, an old photo, and excerpts from the journal. "I'm not here to destroy the empire my father built. I'm here to purify it, to remind everyone that power was never meant to hide sins. I've lived in the shadow of a name, but from today on, I choose to live in the light of truth." The room fell into silence. Eva stepped forward to stand beside him. "I used to be nameless, just a waitress, a mistake in the eyes of this family. But today I stand here as the daughter of the bravest woman I've ever known, my mother and his mother, and we are silent no longer." The glass doors swung open. 2 police officers entered. "Charles Davenport, you are under arrest for forgery, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Your rights will be explained on the way." Charles stood. He didn't resist, but his eyes burned with hatred. "You think this is over? I made this world. I can bring it all down with me." Julian leaned in and whispered, "You built it on lies. Now we'll rebuild it with the truth." Later, a wooden bench in the park. Twilight. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, reflecting in Eva's eyes, now clearer, stronger. "You think it's over?" she asked softly. Julian shook his head. "No, but at least we're starting again, in the right place, with the right people." Eva opened the journal. She tucked an old photo inside their mother herself as a child and young Julian. She kept us connected with a single thread. But it was strong enough to pull the truth all the way back. A gentle breeze stirred. The silver bracelet around her neck brushed against the page, and the final words appeared. "No secret lives forever in the light." The Classic Hall at Wellington Law School. Davenport Foundation Tribute Ceremony. One day after the press conference, Julian still showed up as scheduled. Despite the scandal, the ceremony at his mother's alma mater was not canceled. But the mood had shifted from celebration to the tense anticipation of an unofficial public reckoning. Eva arrived with Julian wearing a deep blue dress. Her hair flowed freely, no longer the waitress hiding behind a counter. She walked straight, chin-high, eyes blazing with quiet fire. On stage, the MC hesitated as he read the name. Please welcome Mr. Charles Davenport, honorary representative of the Golden Generation Fund. All heads turned. Charles stepped onto the stage, arrogant as ever. He took the microphone. I know the past few days have been filled with troubling news, but I assure you it's all been a misunderstanding. A smear campaign by those who crave power, but don't understand sacrifice. Murmurs swept the room. Some nodded, others frowned. Then Julian stepped forward. He didn't need a microphone, only his gaze. If this is a smear campaign, then let's look at the evidence. The LED screen behind him flickered to life. A secret recording taken 5 years earlier between Charles and his internal advisor. He never needs to know who killed his mother, as long as he thinks it was illness. And the girl, ship her off. Throw some hush money, call her a mistake. The room froze. A microphone hit the floor with a clack, slicing through the silence. Eva stepped onto the stage. I used to think I was just a server, invisible in this city. But today I stand here with a name and a truth. She lifted the journal, holding it high. The screen showed the final handwritten page. Eva is the only light I could leave behind when I could no longer protect Julian. If you read this, find her. Love her like your own because she is. Her voice trembled, but her hand did not. I don't need recognition anymore, because now I know who I am and how deeply my mother loved me. Julian took her hand. And I didn't find you because of blood. I found you because of heart. Mom left behind 2 hearts, and now they found each other. Charles attempts to flee, stopped in the school lobby. Charles rushed down the corridor, suitcase in hand. Sunlight cut through the windows, slicing pale stripes across his face. In the main lobby, a team of federal agents waited. One stepped forward with a warrant. Charles Davenport, you are under arrest for involuntary manslaughter, embezzlement, abuse of power, and destruction of evidence. He froze, and from afar he saw Eva. His eyes didn't burn with hatred this time. Strangely, there was something like regret. Faint, fleeting, but not enough to become an apology. Eva said nothing, just looked. The agents cuffed him. His suitcase fell open. Inside was nothing but an old photograph, Julian, their mother, and Charles. That night, Julian, alone with his mother's portrait. At home, Julian sat in the dim glow of the living room. A photo of his mother rested on the table, surrounded by candlelight. He wore the shirt she once loved. His fingers touched the silver bracelet, now remade into a pendant. I did what you feared most, exposed everything. But I know you didn't want me to live in lies any longer. The golden light reflected in his eyes, no longer angry, just still and wet with tears. The next morning, a new beginning. Julian and Eva stood outside their new cafe. Eva held up a wooden sign, Eva and Jules, where truth begins. Julian, wearing an apron, opened the door and let the morning light flood in. No more empire, no more titles, just a small shop, an old coffee machine, and real family. You think Mom would like it? Eva asked. Not just like it, Julian smiled. She'd say, you finally used your real strength, not money, but courage. The breeze carried the scent of fresh pastries, roasted coffee, and laughter. Real laughter. Closing reflections. We live surrounded by masks, legacy, prestige, expectations. But some things can't be faked. Family, tears, and forgiveness. A bracelet can be jewelry, or a thread that ties 2 distant hearts back together. Justice doesn't come from loud speeches. It comes when one person has the courage to stand, and another the love to never let go. A crisp autumn morning, the Eva and Jules Cafe. Golden sunlight danced through the front window. The wooden sign, Eva and Jules, where truth begins, swayed gently under a string of fairy lights quietly blinking in the breeze. Inside, the smell of freshly roasted coffee mixed with warm cinnamon waffles, creating a sense of calm that felt almost sacred. Julian wiped the counter with slow, steady movements. Gone was the urgency of a man once buried in billion-dollar deals. Now each gesture carried the ease of someone living honestly for the first time in a long time. Eva brought out 2 lattes, placing them gently on the table by the window. We've got an early guest today, someone special. Julian looked up. An elderly woman entered, silver-haired, walking with a wooden cane. Her eyes squinted like peering through time itself. She was the last living friend of their mother, the one who had once helped guard the great secret. "You look just like your mother," the woman whispered, her voice shaky but warm. Julian held her hand, his eyes misty. "I found my sister Grandma. Mom can rest easy now." The old woman pulled a faded photograph from her coat pocket. Their mother holding baby Eva and partially torn from the background, Charles. "I've kept this all my life, hoping one day you two would find each other. Now I can sleep in peace." The Davenport family cemetery, transformed. Lush green grass, polished marble. On a newly engraved headstone, the words read, "Eleanor Davenport, a mother who loved with all her courage. She left behind 2 hearts that one day found each other." Eva placed the silver bracelet beside the flower vase. Julian tucked in a sprig of dried lavender. No words were needed for a while, but this silence wasn't empty. It was the silence of healing. They sat on a wooden bench near the fountain. Children laughed nearby. A balloon floated gently into the sky. Eva watched it rise, her eyes glassy. "I used to stand here as a kid. Mom once told me, someday you won't have to bow your head anymore." Julian looked at her. "And now you stand tall. For her. For yourself." Eva smiled. She handed him a small box. "I found this tucked behind a dresser at the care home. Mom hid it well." Inside were unsent letters written from their mother to Charles. One stood out. "Julian has your eyes, but his heart, that belongs to me. If you ever deny him, at least have the decency to say a prayer for that heart." Julian gripped the letter, drawing a slow breath. She loved him, and she hurt, but she never turned cruel. She still hoped he'd pray. The cafe, official grand opening. A line of people stretched from the cafe door to the sidewalk. A handwritten sign read, "All drinks are free today if you're willing to share a truth that once hurt you and how you healed." People smiled, people cried. They scribbled notes and posted them on the wall of truth. A middle-aged man wrote, "I lost everything, my wife, my home, my company. But today I know all I needed was the courage to begin again." A young woman wrote, "I once believed I was unlovable until I learned to love myself first." Eva glanced at Julian. He nodded. They stepped outside, read each note aloud, and embraced strangers like old friends. A quiet voice in the morning light. "Some threads seem broken, but sometimes they're just hidden, like a bracelet, like family, like faith. We don't get to choose where we come from, but we do choose how we rise from it. An empire can be built with power, but a family only with truth and forgiveness." Golden sunset bathed the storefront of Eva and Jules. Light spilled through the window, casting a warm glow on the wall of handwritten notes, each one a story, a wound, a quiet victory. Eva stood inside, gently brushing her fingers over a note that read, "I was once an abandoned child, but now I know I was always worth finding." She turned to Julian, who was carefully wrapping a pastry for an elderly customer. He smiled, eyes shining with gratitude, not toward anyone in particular, but toward life itself, for giving them a second chance. A voice begins, calm, warm, almost like a whisper, straight into the listener's heart. Have you ever stumbled upon an old keepsake, something you thought was lost forever? And in that moment, your past comes rushing back like a flood. Have you ever had a truth resurface? A truth long buried, and suddenly you're no longer the same person you were the day before. And if that moment comes, what would you do? Run, confront it, forgive. If you've ever lived through one of those moments where a small memory cracked open something bigger than yourself, we invite you to share it. Comment below. Have you ever met a person, found an object, or experienced an event that changed the course of your life? It could have been an old letter, a glance, a simple sentence, but it left you forever different. Write it down as a message to your past self, or for someone out there today who might need to hear it. The voice continues. The light fades into soft hues of violet and blue. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If it touched your heart even for a moment, please hit share. Because somewhere out there, someone might still be holding on to an old bracelet, an old ache, and waiting for a quiet reminder that they are not alone. Don't forget to subscribe and tap the little bell icon so you don't miss the next story. Stories told not just through images, but through the heart. We don't get to choose where we begin, but we can choose where we end. Let it be a place of truth and love.